Angelina Jolie is reportedly at a turning point, reconsidering her life in Los Angeles as years of legal pressure and rising costs quietly reshape what stability looks like for one of Hollywood's most recognizable names. According to multiple sources, this isn't about walking away from fame overnight. It's about sustainability, priorities, and a lifestyle that may no longer make sense in the city that defined her career. What's surprising isn't that change is on the table, it's why now. Publicly available reports suggest that despite decades of successful films, directing projects, and humanitarian work, the financial and emotional weight of a long-running legal dispute has forced Jolie to reassess how and where she wants to live. And the choices she's considering may redefine the next chapter of her life far more than any movie role ever could. Over the past year, speculation has steadily grown around Jolie's future in Hollywood. Those conversations intensified when reports emerged that she had listed her historic Los Angeles estate for sale, a property long associated with privacy, legacy, and family life. For many observers, the move raised an obvious question. Why would someone so deeply established in the industry consider stepping back now? Sources close to the situation suggest the answer isn't dramatic, but it is significant. Maintaining a high-profile life in Los Angeles comes with constant financial pressure, even for global stars. Between property costs, staffing, security, taxes, and legal obligations, the expenses don't pause simply because someone chooses a quieter public presence. And in Jolie's case, those pressures have reportedly been compounded by years of ongoing legal proceedings connected to her divorce from Brad Pitt. According to individuals familiar with the matter, the dispute surrounding the Château Miraval winery has been especially costly. The disagreement, which centers on the sale of Jolie's stake in the property, has involved multiple jurisdictions, extended timelines, and a level of legal complexity that rarely resolves quickly. While both parties have continued to work professionally during this period, insiders claim the cumulative cost of the process has been substantial. This is where the narrative often gets oversimplified, but the reality appears more nuanced. Jolie is not described as being without resources. Instead, sources emphasize that her situation reflects something more relatable. Even considerable wealth can be strained when major expenses continue year after year without a clear endpoint. Legal fees, asset management, and long-term planning can quietly reshape financial priorities, especially when combined with the desire to provide stability for a family. Reportedly, these factors have prompted Jolie to explore alternatives that align more closely with how she wants to live going forward. Rather than downsizing ambition, the shift appears to be about redefining value, less emphasis on maintaining an expensive base in Los Angeles, and more focus on locations that offer privacy, cultural connection, and a lower cost of sustaining day-to-day life. Several regions have been mentioned by sources as possibilities. Europe remains a strong option, particularly countries where Jolie has spent extended time for film projects and personal interests. Italy and France are frequently referenced, in part due to lifestyle balance and proximity to creative hubs, without the intensity of Hollywood's constant spotlight. Asia and parts of Africa have also been discussed, not as sudden or random choices, but as places already woven into Jolie's personal history. Cambodia, in particular, holds long-standing significance through her humanitarian work, film experiences, and family ties. Individuals close to her suggest that living internationally feels natural rather than disruptive, an extension of a life already shaped by global engagement. What's notable is how those around her describe the mindset behind these considerations. Rather than fear-driven decisions, the tone is reportedly practical and forward-looking. Friends have characterized Jolie as thoughtful and strategic, someone focused on making choices that allow her to continue meaningful work while preserving long-term flexibility. At the same time, the transition isn't framed as a permanent goodbye to filmmaking or creative projects. On the contrary, recent work, including her involvement in major theater productions and upcoming film-related commitments, suggests she remains deeply engaged. The difference lies in where she wants her personal life to be anchored. Industry observers point out that this shift reflects a broader pattern among high-profile creatives. As production becomes increasingly global and remote collaboration more common, Living full-time in Los Angeles is no longer a requirement for staying relevant or productive. For someone with Jolie's experience and connections, geographic flexibility may actually open more doors than it closes. Still, the timing raises important questions. How much has the legal battle influenced this reassessment? What does financial pressure really mean at this level of wealth? And how might relocating change not only Jolie's lifestyle, but the types of projects she chooses next? Those questions remain open, and intentionally so, because while reports provide pieces of the picture, the full story is still unfolding, shaped by decisions that haven't yet been made public. And that's where the conversation gets even more interesting. As this possible transition continues to take shape, one detail keeps surfacing in conversations around Angelina Jolie's future: control. According to people familiar with her thinking, this moment isn't about retreat. It's about regaining agency after years of external pressure, public scrutiny, and ongoing legal uncertainty. And for someone whose career has unfolded largely under a microscope, the idea of simplifying life outside Los Angeles carries a different kind of power. The financial element, while often highlighted in headlines, appears to be only one layer of a much larger decision. Insiders suggest that the true strain comes from the combination of sustained legal costs and the unpredictability that comes with them. Unlike fixed expenses, legal proceedings can expand without warning: new filings, new hearings, and new timelines that require constant attention and resources. Even for someone with long-term investments and diversified income, that uncertainty can influence how aggressively, or cautiously, one plans for the future. According to publicly available information, the Château Miraval dispute has involved multiple legal systems and complex contractual questions. That complexity is important because it explains why the situation hasn't resolved quickly and why costs can accumulate quietly or over time. Attorneys familiar with similar cases often describe them as marathons rather than sprints, requiring ongoing financial commitment long before any final outcome is reached. Sources close to Jolie have reportedly noted that, at a certain point, practical decisions become unavoidable. Selling assets, consolidating properties, or reducing overhead doesn't signal distress. It signals recalibration. In high net worth circles, these moves are often part of preserving long-term stability rather than reacting to immediate crisis. That perspective helps reframe the reports about Jolie parting with select belongings. While headlines may focus on individual items, people in her orbit describe these choices as strategic rather than emotional. The emphasis, they say, is on maintaining flexibility, ensuring that ongoing obligations don't limit future options. And that brings the conversation back to location. Los Angeles offers access, infrastructure, and influence, but it also demands constant financial and emotional investment. Property taxes, security needs, staffing, and the sheer cost of privacy add up quickly. In contrast, many international locations provide comparable quality of life with significantly lower ongoing expenses, especially for someone who doesn't need to commute daily to studio lots or industry events. Europe, in particular, has been described by insiders as a natural fit. The pace is different, the public culture around celebrities is often less intrusive, and the proximity to international creative centers allows continued involvement in film, theater, and humanitarian work without the same intensity of exposure. Asia and Africa offer something else entirely: alignment with Jolie's long-standing philanthropic interests. Over the years, she has built deep relationships with organizations and communities across these regions, often spending extended periods there outside of public view. For those close to her, the idea of relocating internationally isn't a break from her identity. It's a continuation of it. Friends reportedly say Jolie feels most grounded when her daily life reflects her values rather than her celebrity. In that sense, stepping away from Los Angeles isn't about leaving Hollywood behind, but about choosing a setting that supports the kind of work and the kind of life she wants to prioritize. At the same time, sources emphasize that this period is not defined by urgency. There's no indication of a rushed exit or abrupt change. Instead, the process appears measured, exploring options, spending time abroad, and assessing what feels sustainable both financially and personally. This slower pace also coincides with a shift in her professional calendar. With fewer immediate film commitments and more involvement in long-form creative projects, Jolie reportedly has the flexibility to plan ahead rather than react. That breathing room may be allowing her to think not just about the next year, but about the next decade. And that raises another question, one that rarely gets asked in celebrity coverage. What happens when someone who has already achieved global recognition starts optimizing for longevity instead of visibility? For Jolie, longevity may mean fewer appearances, more selective projects, and a lifestyle that supports consistent work without constant pressure. It may also mean redefining success in terms of impact rather than output, something she has gradually moved toward throughout her career. Yet none of this exists in isolation. The legal dispute remains unresolved, and until it is, uncertainty will continue to shape decision-making. That lingering question, when and how the situation concludes, casts a long shadow over every major choice. Still, those close to Jolie describe her as cautiously optimistic. While aware of financial realities, she is reportedly focused on creating a future that feels balanced rather than constrained. A future where location, workload, and personal values are aligned instead of competing. And as this chapter unfolds, it becomes clear that the real story isn't about leaving Los Angeles. It's about what comes next.